Bro, you seriously look like you're about to collapse. I barely managed to laugh as I pushed open the apartment door and stepped inside. My shoulders ached from carrying heavy trays all evening at the restaurant, and my legs felt like they were seconds away from giving up completely. The smell of coffee and rain filled the apartment. And standing in the kitchen under the warm yellow lights was Ethan Walker. Shirtless. Of course he was shirtless. He leaned casually against the counter holding 2 mugs of coffee while messy dark hair fell over his forehead like he belonged in some Netflix romance series instead of our tiny Chicago apartment. "Long shift?" he asked. "You have no idea." Ethan walked over and handed me one of the mugs. Our fingers brushed for barely a second, but somehow that tiny touch still sent warmth through my chest. That was the problem with Ethan. Everything he did affected me. His smile. His voice. The way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Living with him for 6 months had become the most emotionally dangerous decision of my life. Because somewhere between late-night movies, grocery runs, and random midnight conversations, I fell for him. And the worst part? I could never tell him. I quickly looked away before he noticed me staring too long again. "You okay?" Ethan asked softly. "Yeah," I lied immediately. He narrowed his eyes slightly. "You've been acting weird lately." My heartbeat stumbled. "I'm just tired." Ethan clearly didn't believe me. I kicked off my shoes and dropped onto the couch while Ethan sat beside me, close enough that his knee touched mine naturally. Neither of us moved away. Rain tapped softly against the windows while silence filled the apartment. Comfortable silence. The kind that only exists between 2 people who know each other too well. Ethan took a sip of coffee before glancing at me again. "You know what you need? $1 million?" He laughed deeply. "Besides that," I shrugged. He smirked slowly before saying, "A hot bath." I looked at him carefully. "You offering spa services now?" "Maybe." The grin on his face instantly made me nervous. Ethan stood up and stretched, tattoos flexing across his arm. "Actually," he said casually, "I was about to take one." "Cool. You should come with me." The sentence hit me like a truck. I blinked slowly. "What?" Ethan laughed at my expression. "Relax, Ryan. The tub's huge." I stared at him, trying to figure out if this was a joke. But Ethan just stood there looking completely calm. Too calm. "You're serious?" I asked quietly. "Why not?" "Because you're the guy I've secretly wanted for months. Because being half naked in a bathtub with you sounds like the worst possible thing for my self-control. Because my heart already can't handle living in the same apartment as you." But instead of saying any of that, I forced out a nervous laugh. "You're insane." "Maybe." Ethan stepped closer. "But you still haven't said no." The way he looked at me made my chest tighten. Like he was waiting for something. Like this meant more to him than he was pretending. My brain screamed at me to walk away. Instead, I stood up slowly. "Fine." For a second, Ethan looked genuinely surprised that I agreed. Then a slow smile spread across his face. And something about that smile made my entire body feel warm. "Good," he said softly. As he turned toward the hallway, I followed behind him while my heart pounded harder with every step. Because deep down, I already knew this night was about to change everything between us. Steam slowly filled the bathroom within minutes. The large bathtub sat under dim golden lights while rain continued hitting the apartment windows outside, making the entire room feel strangely private, almost unreal. I stood near the sink nervously while Ethan adjusted the water temperature like this was the most normal thing in the world. Meanwhile, my heart was seconds away from exploding. "You coming or what?" he asked with a grin. I swallowed hard. "You really don't think this is weird?" Ethan looked over his shoulder at me. "Depends." "On what?" "On why you're nervous." I opened my mouth to answer but nothing came out. Because the truth was impossible to say out loud. I was nervous because Ethan looked unfairly attractive already, and seeing him this relaxed and close to me was destroying every ounce of self-control I had left. Ethan shook his head with a quiet laugh before climbing into the tub first. "Relax, Ryan. I'm not gonna bite." "That's very comforting." "It should be." I finally stepped into the hot water carefully and sat on the opposite side of the tub, keeping as much distance between us as possible. At least, that was the plan. The bathtub was big but not big enough. Our knees brushed under the water almost immediately. My entire body reacted instantly. Ethan noticed. Of course he noticed. A small smirk appeared on his face, but thankfully he didn't say anything. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward exactly. It was worse. It was charged. Every tiny movement felt too noticeable. Every accidental touch lasted too long. I leaned my head back against the tub, trying desperately to calm down. "This actually feels amazing," Ethan said softly. "Yeah. You still look tense. I wonder why." He laughed quietly. Then, after a few seconds, Ethan slid slightly closer through the water. Not enough to be obvious. Just enough that I noticed immediately. "So," he said casually, "you ever think about dating anyone lately?" The question caught me off guard. Where did that come from? "I'm curious." I stared at the ceiling. "Not really." "That's a lie." I turned toward him. "Excuse me?" "You get this look sometimes." "What look?" "Like there's something you want to say but stop yourself." My chest tightened. Ethan's voice softened. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" I looked at him finally. Big mistake. Because he was already staring at me. Not casually. Not jokingly. Intensely. Like he was trying to figure me out. The air between us suddenly felt heavier. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. Ethan moved even closer until our legs fully touched beneath the water. Neither of us moved away. "Can I ask you something?" he asked softly. "Depends." His eyes stayed locked on mine. "Have you ever looked at someone and realized you were completely screwed?" My heartbeat nearly stopped. "What kind of question is that?" "The honest kind." I couldn't breathe properly anymore. Ethan's hand moved slowly through the water until his fingers lightly touched mine. Just barely. But that tiny contact sent electricity through my entire body. His voice dropped lower. "Because I think that's happening to me right now." Every thought disappeared from my head. All I could focus on was him. The warmth of the water. The closeness between us. The way his eyes kept drifting down to my lips. I should have pulled away. Instead, I whispered, "Lynn?" He leaned closer instantly. Close enough that I could feel his breath against my skin. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. But I couldn't. I didn't want to. And judging by the way Ethan was looking at me now, neither did he. The bathroom suddenly felt too small. Too hot. Too dangerous. Ethan's face was only inches from mine now, his fingers still lightly touching my hand beneath the water while neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed normally anymore. "Tell me to stop," he whispered again. But the truth was, I couldn't. Because for months, this was all I wanted. Every late-night conversation. Every accidental touch in the kitchen. Every moment where I caught him staring at me when he thought I wouldn't notice. It all led here. And maybe Ethan felt it too. I looked down at his lips for half a second. That was enough. Ethan moved first. Slowly. Carefully. Giving me one last chance to pull away. But instead of stopping him, I leaned closer. The second our lips touched, my entire body went still. For a moment, neither of us fully kissed back, almost like we were both shocked this was actually happening. Then Ethan's hand slid gently to the side of my face, and the kiss deepened. Months of hidden feelings crashed into that single moment. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy. It felt emotional. Like both of us had been holding our breath for far too long. When Ethan pulled back slightly, his forehead rested against mine while we both tried to breathe normally again. "Ryan," he whispered. I could hear the emotion in his voice. And honestly, that affected me more than the kiss itself. You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that. My heart nearly exploded. I let out a nervous laugh. "Seriously?" Ethan smiled softly. "You think I invite all my roommates to take baths with me?" I laughed harder this time, and somehow the tension between us eased slightly. But Ethan kept staring at me in that same intense way. Like he was finally allowing himself to feel something he'd been hiding. "I've been so confused lately," he admitted quietly. About what? You. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Ethan leaned back slightly against the tub, running a hand through his wet hair. I've never looked at anyone the way I look at you. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. At first I thought maybe it was just because we became close friends. He shook his head slowly. But then I started getting jealous whenever you mentioned other guys. My stomach flipped. And every time you smiled at me, he laughed softly to himself. Man, it completely ruined me. I didn't even realize I was smiling until Ethan noticed. There's that look again, he murmured. What look? The one that makes me want to kiss you again. Before I could answer, he leaned forward and kissed me a second time. This one felt different. More confident. More certain. My hand instinctively moved to the back of his neck while Ethan pulled me closer through the water, and suddenly the distance we'd carefully kept between us for months completely disappeared. The world outside the bathroom faded away. No stress. No confusion. No pretending. Just him. When the kiss finally ended, Ethan stayed close enough that our noses still brushed together. So, he said quietly, smiling against my lips. What happens now? I looked into his eyes and realized something terrifying. I didn't want this moment to end. Not ever. And judging by the way Ethan was holding me, neither did he. After that night, everything in the apartment changed, even though on the surface, nothing did. We still went to work. Still shared groceries. Still acted like normal roommates in front of the world. But behind closed doors? Nothing about us was normal anymore. Ethan started finding excuses to stand closer to me in the kitchen. Sometimes he'd wrap his arm around my waist just as he passed behind me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And every time he did it, my brain forgot how to function. One morning, I woke up to find him already awake, sitting on the edge of my bed scrolling through his phone. In my hoodie. Why are you in my room? I muttered, still half asleep. He didn't even look guilty. Your alarm didn't go off. I blinked at him. So your solution was breaking into my room? I didn't break in, he said calmly. I live here. Then he finally looked at me. And smiled. That soft, lazy smile that made my chest tighten every single time. You look cute when you're sleepy. Don't start, I warned, sitting up. He leaned closer without hesitation. Start what? This was the problem. Ethan had no concept of personal space anymore. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. I tried to push past him, but he caught my wrist gently. Not forcing. Just holding. That simple touch made me stop completely. Ryan, he said more quietly now, come here. And before I could overthink it, he pulled me closer until I was sitting right beside him. The air between us felt different now. Less confused. More certain. You okay? He asked. I nodded even though my heart was racing. Ethan studied me for a moment, then brushed his thumb lightly over my knuckles. I still think about that night, he admitted. My breath caught. Yeah. All the time. There was something honest in his voice that made it impossible to joke or hide behind nervous laughter. So I didn't. I do too, I whispered. That was all it took. Ethan's hand moved to my jaw, lifting my face gently. Then why are we pretending during the day? I didn't have an answer. Because he was right. We were pretending. Avoiding what we both knew had already happened. Ethan leaned in slowly, giving me space to stop him again. I didn't. Our lips met softly at first, like we were still learning each other. But it didn't stay soft for long. Not anymore. This time there was no shock. No hesitation. Just the quiet certainty that we had already crossed a line we couldn't come back from. When we finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against mine. A small laugh escaped him. We are so screwed, he said. I smiled despite myself. Yeah. But neither of us sounded scared. It felt like falling. And for the first time, neither of us wanted to stop. After that, life didn't go back to normal. It couldn't. Ethan and I never officially announced anything, but somehow the apartment already knew our secret. The way we looked at each other. The way we always ended up in the same room. The way silence between us had turned soft instead of distant. Everything gave it away. One Saturday evening, we were cooking together in the kitchen when Ethan suddenly leaned against the counter watching me like he always did now. "Stop staring," I said without looking up. "I'm not staring," he replied instantly. "I'm appreciating." I rolled my eyes. "That's the same thing." He stepped closer behind me and rested his chin lightly on my shoulder. And just like that, my focus disappeared. "You're distracting me," I muttered. "That's kind of the point." I turned slightly. "You're impossible." Ethan smiled against my skin. "You like it?" And he wasn't wrong. Before I could respond, a loud knock hit the apartment door. We both froze. That wasn't normal. Ethan groaned quietly. "Ignore it. It might be important." Another knock. Stronger this time. I wiped my hands and walked toward the door while Ethan followed behind me, clearly annoyed at whoever was ruining his moment. I opened it, and everything stopped. Standing outside was Ethan's older brother, Jason, suitcase in hand, smiling politely until his eyes shifted past me to Ethan, standing behind me. Close. Too close. Jason's smile slowly faded. There was a long silence. Then he raised an eyebrow. "Okay," he said slowly. I did not expect that. Ethan didn't move away from me. Didn't hide it. Instead, he casually placed a hand on my waist like it belonged there. "Hey, Jason." His brother looked between us again. Then sighed. "You're serious?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah." Jason blinked like he was processing a complicated math problem. Then suddenly, instead of anger, he laughed. Both of us stared at him confused. "What?" Ethan asked. Jason shook his head. "I thought you were just bad at cooking. Turns out you were busy falling in love." I felt my face heat instantly. Ethan groaned. "Shut up." But Jason kept smiling. "I'm not judging," he said, walking inside like he owned the place. "Honestly, this makes a lot more sense than your last girlfriend situation." Ethan glared at him. "That was one time. Still counts." I couldn't help it, I laughed. And the tension in the room finally broke. Later that night, after Jason left, Ethan and I sat on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, city lights stretching across Chicago in front of us. He gently pulled me closer. "You know," I said softly, "I still can't believe this is real." Ethan kissed the side of my head. "Which part?" "All of it." He stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "I think it was real the moment you said yes to that bath." I laughed under my breath. That was a terrible idea. Best terrible idea of my life. I looked up at him, and for a second, everything felt still. No confusion. No fear. No pretending. Just him. Just us. Ethan leaned in and kissed me slowly, like he always did now, like he wasn't rushing anywhere. When he pulled back, he smiled softly. "Still surprised?" he asked. I nodded honestly. "Yeah." He tightened his arm around me. "Good," he whispered, "because I'm not done surprising you yet."